All right. All right, everybody. This is Eric with Motion Guidance, one of the co-owners. And today I'm excited to have Karl Sterling on this Zoom interview. Karl is an author and a researcher and a clinician, and he's doing a lot of treatment around Parkinson's disease and regeneration training. I have his book here, Parkinson's Regeneration Training, Neuropsychomotor Rehabilitation. I encourage you guys to go find that out. I actually know a few of the co-authors back here. Karl, I don't know if you knew that. Dr. Capobianco and Rika Apria, among a few others.
Yeah.
Rika. Yeah, always nice to see names that you know and influencers.
You're in Colorado, right?
That's correct. Yep.
Did you know Steve when he was at Project Move? I think he still owns Project Moves partially.
Correct. That's actually how I know him, being local in the Colorado area. So we've
the Littleton area. Yeah, I taught there many times, and Steve's the best, man.
He's a really good guy. The whole family is very involved in rehabilitation, as you probably remember.
Yeah, Robin is too. Yes.
So that's really nice to see. Why don't you give the listeners a little background about who you are? You can just go wherever you want to with that, as far as either credential or experience and where you are and what you're doing.
Well, thanks, man. It's really, first of all, thanks for having me. It's great to connect like this and be able to talk with you, learn from you, and I'm happy to share what I know, what I do, I should say, probably is more like it, because there's so much more to know that I don't know. Well, I'm 60 years old. I live in Syracuse, New York area most of my life. For the first 35 years of my adult life, well, technically starting at 14, I was a drummer for a living. That's what I did all my life. I mean, there were other odd things I did too, some real estate, driving a truck for 2 years. Nobody knows about that one. I didn't put that in the book, but I was a truck driver, and I still was always a musician until about 12 years ago, I got into personal training. That was my first endeavor that I found really interesting outside of music, because I didn't want to be in music, really. I mean, it was good to me and I was very lucky, but short story is this: I was almost 300 pounds. I'm 6'2". That's too big. I got a trainer, Eric, who lives in Skaneateles near me. Eric Prager, if you see this, thank you, because you helped me shed 70 pounds in 1 year. And after that 1 year, I thought, you know what, if I can help anybody feel half as good as I feel now after a year, I got to do it. So I talked with another friend who, Brent Brookbush, Dr. Brookbush, one of my closest friends ever, who I also taught for 3 years, Brookbush Institute. We still talk every day. He said, get NASM or I'll kill you. So I did. I went and I did the NASM personal certification training cert, and then became a master trainer for them. And Parkinson's, though, that started when I went back to school for nutrition. Oh, it's almost 10 years now. I went back to school at SU, Syracuse University, to study nutrition, because I thought, well, now I can help people with their physical aspect and movement and all that to lose weight. That was primary clientele back in the day, was weight loss, because I've been through it and I knew how to do it. So Eric, my trainer, is also a registered dietitian, so he was really good at helping me with both ends. Went back to school, and that's where I met a dear friend now, Jerry Evensky. It's my economics professor. Long story short, I'm a slow learner. I was up after every class almost, Dr. Evensky, what do you mean about this thing in macro and economics and micro? What is this? And what is diminishing returns? I didn't know anything. After about 2 months, he says, hey, I hear you work at the gym up here, because I started working at the SU gym. I need help. I have Parkinson's. I'm losing bone density. What should I do? Sure, I'll help you. I had no idea what to do. However, my son was also in school doing his PhD in between 2 years of MD school, then did PhD. It happened to be Parkinson's related. While he didn't know what to do exactly, he knew where to turn me, point me towards. So Dr. Shumei Wong was his mentor, an amazing lady. Nick's done. He's an MD now working here in Syracuse as an emergency room doctor. But bottom line is that started my geek out, learn, nerd out process. I need to know. I need to know stuff. And that was the beginning of working with people with Parkinson's with Jerry. Just a little tag on to the end of that is I became obsessed, and I still am obsessed, not just with Parkinson's, but just with the brain in general and the nervous systems. And I started a podcast, it's going to be 9 years ago, this in 2022. And my first person I interviewed with Dr. Brooke Bush, I said, before I leave, give me 2 names. So he gave me Perry Nicholson, Stop Chasing Pain. He gave me Dr. Emily Splickle. I interviewed both of them in the next 2 weeks. They gave me names of Capobianco. And actually, it also started, Emily recruited me to teach for her. So then I started traveling and meeting people like Steve Capo. And oh my gosh, I can't even think of all the people in the back of the book, that book cover, who contributed, and so many more. And I've been really lucky to be around people all over the world, primarily Europe and USA, North America, but also a lot of Mexico, some in South America and Asia, where, you know how it is, man. I started teaching my course 7 years ago. I wrote it, and it keeps evolving, and wrote the 2 books. And I feel like I'm still at the beginning, because then along comes, it was Anthony Carey. Anthony Carey I met and interviewed at an NASM convention in Scottsdale, maybe 6 years ago. I saw his post of the chart. I don't have it right here accessible to see, but the motion guidance thing with the clock, like the numbers, and the maze.
Yep.
Like, dude, where did you get this? And so now I am an official motion guidance user, because, that visual feedback is immediate. And I feel like I'm barely scratching the surface of what I can do with this thing. But what we're doing right now is so powerful. And so that I kind of went a little longer than I wanted, but that's my trajectory, right? Drummer, personal trainer, neuro rehab, interviewer, researcher. I have a beautiful clinic and a medical facility now. I am truly so lucky, but also to be doing things that other people don't necessarily know about, certainly not in my area. And so this is in the very top of the list, game changers. I love it.
Well, that's great, Karl. We appreciate that. I think it's always fascinating when you travel and talk to people, or you get on, social networking types of things like this, and you hear their story. And, one thing that's apparent is there's so much information that's accessible for people who want to go get it. And of course, we all kind of get into our silos a little bit and tribalize. But if you're just really interested about brain and neurophys and, these types of rehabilitation things, you can acquire so much knowledge without necessarily having to, go to an institute to necessarily get that stuff. And personal experience obviously can enhance your outcomes just based on, trial and error and wanting to help people and things like what you're doing. What were your social media handles again? Like, I know on Instagram, we share a lot of things back and forth.
Well, Facebook, you just look me up, Karl Sterling, Karl with a K. On Instagram, neuromotor training.
That's right.
I mean, I have more than one on there. There's Parkinson's regeneration training. I just decided that I didn't want to stay solely in a Parkinson's realm. The next book that comes out won't be Parkinson's. It's going to be more comprehensive of humanity, because we all have brains and a nervous system. So the intervention, what causes us to, let's say, move less optimally or function less optimally, that may vary. It could be Charcot-Marie-Tooth, MSA, MS, ataxia, cerebral ataxia, all these different things, right? Parkinson's. But it also just, if you look at the intervention strategies, we can get specific with some things. But we're really targeting nervous systems and brain because we all have that. So the intervention strategies, while we individualize them for people based on their needs, they still end up being very similar, if not exactly the same in some cases. There's always a little variance depending upon the person.
Of course.
But, I feel sometimes like I put myself into a tunnel of Parkinson's only. It's not about that. Only about half the people I work with have Parkinson's. The rest may not have any problem. Maybe they just have bad balance. Maybe they have some other issue. Maybe it's early, mild cognitive decline, dementia, Alzheimer's, or nothing. And no matter what, conceptually, the intervention strategies I see as being about the same.
Sure. So that's an interesting point, because one thing with, being an owner and involved heavily in motion guidance, and one of the genesis of motion guidance was being able to have what you mentioned earlier, which is that immediate visual feedback for a person, just have a collection of feedback inputs, or things that they can not only hear and touch but also see in real time.
Yeah.
That should be a used thing, and of course I'm biased with that, but it doesn't matter what your condition is. Having some sort of feedback is only going to typically improve, especially for novice skills that you might not have, or conditions you might not be aware of. So how are you using it right now in your facility for that variety of clientele that you mentioned, and why was it so impactful for you?
Well, I'll tell you the second part, why it's so impactful. 5 years ago or so, I was in Colorado Springs. I've done a lot of teaching in Denver, Glenwood Springs, and Colorado Springs. And so I was in Colorado Springs with a friend of mine, Jordan Chambrone, amazing movement specialist. We were after one of our many climbs of the Manitou Incline. Very humbling, but what a beautiful run on the way down on Bar Trail.
Oh yeah.
We went to the Colorado Springs Brain Clinic, and I met not doctor, but Marcus Ernst. And he has this really cool device there, which is way out of my league financially, $250,000, but called the GyroStim.
Yep.
Have you seen the GyroStim?
Yeah, we've actually spoken with him also. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
What a guy, right? So he had this device. We were talking at that time. I was starting to get into the benefits of reading and learning about, okay, what else can we do besides simulate and create more sensory input? We can go barefoot. We can use some special textured surfaces to wake up some of those small, that heavily populated area of plantar skin, to just send an immediate input through peripheral central to the brain, wake up, and then an immediate signal back out to help stabilize there. Yeah, that works fantastic. I learned that from Emily Spickle, Dr. Spickle. But what can we do besides that and some other things? And he had me sit down on a stability ball, and then he had this device he made with his own like laser pen with some kind of funny like old belt at a mount. And he said, now draw a figure 8 pattern on the wall in front of you. So I'm doing this. He says, now your eyes are tracking and your vestibular is activated. So you have vestibular and visual simultaneous activation while you're challenging yourself. Well, for me, it wasn't that much of a challenge, but for some people, it would be a big challenge to keep themselves upright on a stability ball.
Sure.
So now we have a balance challenge, maybe stand up, do it on a single leg or whatever. But you have a vestibular visual simultaneous activation. And I was kind of close to the wall. So, fill up the wall space, I'm doing big turns. Like, man, this is really cool. And I always thought I would make my own laser, and I never did.
We've heard that a lot.
Then I saw you. I'm like, okay, this is it, man. So we use it for that. We'll use it for that. That's one of the things. We have a lady right now who would like to drive again. We have a few things to work on before I'd get on the road with her if she's on the road. She can't, I'm not going to let her drive yet. I mean, not that I have any choice in that, but one thing is you need better reaction time. You need to be able to move your head better. I mean, we could do exercises to turn the head, but if you can't turn your head far enough, you might miss something. If your eyes won't track right, you might miss something oncoming traffic. There's just an idea. Plus the idea that we can have vestibular or visual simultaneous stimulation activation going on. There's so many benefits to that. And I don't know what they all are. There's a book about it called The Infinity Walk, but that's a whole different thing, right?
Right.
But I've done the Infinity Walk. It's walking a figure-8 pattern while your head's focused on one thing. So we use one of your targets and keep the laser on the target while we're walking a figure-8. Maybe we throw in a cognitive exercise, whatever it is. So we're using the laser as one of the layers of, let's say, improving multitasking skills cognitively, and maybe probably movement too, in addition to a vestibular, visual, simultaneous activation. So we have all these systems going at the same time, and it's a challenge. It's a challenge for me. It's a challenge for everybody. We just up the challenge to the level the person can do safe enough, but still challenging them. We don't want them to get hurt. That's one of the big things we use it for. Another thing would be posture. It's been this is the best posture input tool that I've ever used, because I can cue all day long. And quite frankly, I'm not the best cuer in the world. Emily and Teresa, who work here as therapists, they're really good. I'm not bad, but I'm not as good as them. But for any of us, get this on the head. I don't have the head strap right here. Inadvertently left it at somebody's house yesterday. I'll get it later today. But anyways, the head strap goes on. We put this on. I start them in a position that I want them to be, head-wise, neck-wise, posture-wise. With, of course, we want the laser on. You can see it's on. And pointing at the target on the opposite wall, which is about 40 feet away. Here we have. And then their job is to walk and keep that in the target the whole way. And I saw in one of the live things you did, you showed, actually one of our clients, Greg, you had him in the video. It was great because that's the best posture we've ever seen with him.
Yeah.
But we have to be careful with posture, because center of gravity sometimes is moved forward, like they're used to a certain thing. So if you get them upright too quickly, it can throw it off. They could maybe actually fall backwards. We don't want to increase fall risk, but gradually we want to work them into better posture. And this gives immediate feedback visually, like real-time feedback on where you're at. And if you do what you're supposed to and you keep the laser on the target, you're going to be maintaining the posture we want, and also the posture we want you to get used to working towards. And
Right.
that's how I'm using it right now, primarily. Those two things. We love it.
Well, I think for some of your clientele, what I see clinically also is when you have a balance or a basal ganglia related disorder, the focus ends up being on the often uncontrollable portions of that disorder. Well, that I'm so focused on one portion, I can't gain information on another portion of what I should be working on, because either I'm moving inadvertently, or when I stand up right, I feel like I'm going to get off balance. And so there's a loss there. That has a deficit to it as a patient. So the risk reward starts going more toward risk sometimes in those, because they can't understand what they're trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
And our main cues as rehab specialists end up being auditory in that, or maybe kinesthetic. Hey, I need you to be up here. I need you to bring your shoulders up, which doesn't necessarily help them learn from that position is what we have found a lot. Interestingly enough, I have a patient right now that has been diagnosed with a condition called orthostatic tremor. So much less common, but very similar in presentation to other basal ganglia type of disorders where, she can only, when I started seeing her, she could only stand about 30 seconds before either her leg tremor in one side or bilaterally would force her to either lean against something or to have to sit. And we started using the motion guidance feedback for almost a distraction. I think was part of the benefit, as well as just extra feedback. And of course, we're blending that with other functional patterns and strengthening and balance related issues. It's not going to be a unimodal approach. But now she can stand for between 5 and 10 minutes without having her tremor force her to change her posture or to sit. Which might not seem like a lot, but for her now, she can go to the grocery store, see somebody she knows, talk to them for 5 minutes, and not have to, be searching around to lean up against something, or have the social distraction of starting to shake, which can be obviously, cognitive or psychologically, a deficit for her. So we see various things, and we try to use the system. But for her, tracking the 30 seconds to 5 to 10 minutes has been the only thing that I can really find for tracking outcomes. Do you have any preferred ways in your clinic that you track outcomes for that particular type of population, besides just timed related things? And sometimes those can be hard to justify to insurance.
One of the things we're working on here this past month is really digging in and trying to track data, because I want to get more results recorded. What's very important to me, and I've maybe put too much emphasis on this, is how the person feels more so than what I see. If I see somebody moving better and feeling better, if I notice an improvement, oh yeah, I'm happy, it's beautiful, that's great. But how they feel is much more important. And I've really gone down that road. But what I need to do is track. So I don't think I can really, I don't have this other thing with me. It's not a competitor to you, but I'll tell you, it's called ElectroSkip. It's the one thing we've been using for, right now it's all prototype, but they're about ready to produce. It's out of Buffalo. Jamie O'Neill is the guy who invented. It's 10 years in the making, but this is this thing that these straps go on the bottom of your shoes. You don't even feel them. There are sensors on toe and heel on each shoe, and it plugs into a transmitter, Bluetooth, that goes to a customized tablet. And then I've just started using motion guidance with ElectroSkip, because what I'm finding is not only does posture improve, and that's completely motion guidance, gait improves, because they're actually walking now to a rhythm or a song, and I have complete control over the metronome, which is like 40 beats a minute to 180 or something like that, maybe 200. And as a former drummer, rhythm is my thing.
Sure.
There are songs to choose from. There are different cueing things. And another thing we can do with this too, we were just doing research in the Upstate University Hospital gait lab in May, and I'm actually going back next week to do more with Parkinson's, and I'm going to show them motion guides. They need to see this. Maybe you and I can talk about that after.
Sure.
But we're going to do more with ElectroSkip, because they have a little grant money left, and we want to get some people with Parkinson's in. And one of the things we can track with this is it measures pressure too. And I don't mean to be talking too much about something else, but this is a really nice combo with motion guidance. So we can actually see how much pressure is going on each sensor. Now, it's not as nice or as good as the $5 million gait lab with force plates on the floor and 10 cameras. But I'll tell you the outcome, this particular thing, I do have outcome. And what I'm finding is the data is very close in what we're measuring. So a $2,000 thing versus a $5 million lab. But one of our, which again, I'd love to talk about it with you and maybe do something in 2022 with Upstate, if you're interested, is cueing the posture and watching how we can use rhythm and posture. Because I'm using it here, and it always is a great combo. It's a beautiful combo. It's the only data I actually have. Put the motion guidance on during electroskip, it gets better. Do just electroskip, it's better, but it's not as good as motion guidance.
Combining the two. Yeah.
It's very cool.
Fascinating to and interesting to look at that for sure. I think that we're going to have to bridge that troubled water at some point between having high-tech equipment that gives us a lot of data and information, and then how do we transfer that over into a smaller clinical setting, with the minimal amount of resources possibly that could be utilized, because these conditions obviously affect all socioeconomic classes, all races, all locations, all over the world. Some of this is tied into our genetics.
It doesn't discriminate.
Correct. Yeah. So these type of projects, I think, are fascinating for people. Motion Guidance as a company has been involved with that, as far as at times being able to collaborate with other people like that. We're always more than willing to do that for the kind of the betterment of humanity type of umbrella. But also because these provide resources for people who just don't have potential resources. And I think that's why clinicians like yourself are super important. Getting more information out there, collaborating is going to be super important. And finding ways to maybe fill in gaps that otherwise aren't thought of by your standard researchers. So yeah, definitely interested in doing that for
Right.
sure. How do you go ahead?
I'm sorry. We'll talk about that
Okay, great.
off the air.
So how do you think where we are with since we were just talking globally, how do you think where are you, or how has the COVID pandemic affected you in being able to reach your clientele, to continue to work with them? Have you done some virtual things, or are you still doing mostly things in your clinic setting?
Yeah, it's been interesting. We didn't really stop seeing many people. There were a few people who didn't want to come in last year, 2020, I'm speaking of.
Mm-hmm.
But even the beginning of this year, I had COVID. I was out for a long time. It was really bad, but I'm fine. I did some virtual. I didn't do a whole lot, though. Quite honestly, it's because I'm not really that good at it. And the reason I'm not good at it is because I haven't spent enough time getting it together to be good at it. I could be, but I don't really want to be. So I chose to do a handful a week, maybe a handful of people, maybe 10 sessions a week, 5 people twice a week last year. And the rest, we still came in and we did it. We just sanitized the living out of everything, and masks, and then the vaccines came out, and when we're 100% back to totally normal now, although we're still taking precautions. So it has not really impacted me at all. And I'm finding that, I guess I'll leave it at that. No, it's fine.
Yeah,
but I have control over my clinic too. I can choose to be open, and there are gyms here and this and that it's different. Things were shut down last year for months. I wasn't in that situation, so I didn't have to shut down, so I didn't.
I think there were, touching on that point with gyms and whatnot, there are a certain number of the population in my area that ended up coming to skilled therapy because they couldn't get into a gym. But then that incurs different costs for them, potentially, depending on what their resources are. Yeah. And my county in particular has been open for a while now. Interesting that different counties in different states, follow different rules, of course, but it's been, we have people that have continued on into skilled therapy because they didn't have any other resources. And you could tell how important it was to their life to have at least an in-person interaction, even if it was, fully distanced and all that, just coming in and saying, well, if you show me and tell me what to do, I'll do it. and then I can come back for follow-ups here. And that was better for them than doing something virtually. One nice thing about motion guidance, though, is that you can send people like a home pack, and you can get them started on some things in their house if they needed to, and do a virtual visit on, hey, these are the things I want you to do, almost like you holding it up to your head and be like, I want you to do this tracing, or do this type of thing. And that's been helpful, but it definitely doesn't reach everybody. And so, I'm always interested talking to other clinicians how COVID has infected, that was a Freudian slip there, affected how they utilize time, I guess, with their patients, and how they can get their needs done. So that's great that you have a setting that allows you to dictate more heavily how you can get that done.
Yeah, well, yeah, I am lucky about that. The other thing I've done, but I did this years ago because I was traveling so much. Consistency with people is the number one most important thing, in my opinion. You can do stuff inconsistently and not hurt yourself. You're not gonna. No harm is done, is what I mean. But if you don't do anything consistently and you're trying to achieve a goal, it's not going to be the same. So consistency has been important since I started doing any kind of training like 12 years ago. So maybe 10 years ago, I started making videos, short, 1 minute, 2 minutes, and now there are hundreds. And they're all on YouTube, but they're not on a public list because they're for patients, they're for clients, they're for those who, before COVID, those who I was working with who were traveling.
Mm-hmm.
And I say, just out of fun, who made excuses because, oh, I'm gone and I can't work out. Guess what? Here's a playlist of 10 videos and you can be done in a half an hour in your hotel room, and you don't need any equipment.
Right.
And you know what? They wouldn't all use it, but some people would use it, and they could maintain consistency and not lose the ground they had possibly gained. Right.
Right.
So now most people come twice a week. Some are 3 times a week. One person is once a week. But I still have homework for all of them, and it's individualized now. It's based on where they're at, what they need, and where they want to go. There's like 3 factors there. What can they do? What do they want to do? And what do they need to do? And so it's customized lists pretty much every week or every other week at the most in between sessions. Please do these videos. This is your homework. It might take 20 minutes. And a lot of it's not that hard to do. Just get started. And you should get the energy to keep going. I'm going to make a side note is in this. Can I just hold up the other book that I did?
I was going to ask you about it anyway. Absolutely.
Oh, well, thank you. Cause I never want to seem like I'm trying to be inappropriate.
Go back just a little bit more.
I have a virtual background, so it's not wanting to pull up. Oh, wait. It's called Parkinson's Empowerment Training.
Maybe go back towards your head.
It's going to show up.
There you go. Oop. Yeah.
We're close. It's called Parkinson's Empowerment Training, and you can't see it, but that's the name of it. Anyways, in one of the chapters in there, talks about the many roles of dopamine. And if you really want to learn about dopamine, go and buy the book called The Molecule of More by, I'm so sorry, I can't remember his name. It's genius book. It is the best book in the world. I have had addiction issues in my life. I'll just put it out there. It's no secret. So dopamine plays a role in that. No matter what it is. Could be work, could be alcohol, drugs, could be whatever.
Of course.
Dopamine is also a driver. It drives you towards things. It'll drive you towards a goal. It'll drive you towards a cup of coffee on the other side of the room. It'll drive you towards a degree, an award, an accomplishment, an event, a person, could drive you towards a person. It could drive you towards anything. But if you don't have the amount of dopamine that you should have, you may not be as driven to do anything. So what we find oftentimes, especially in an off state with Parkinson's and the few other conditions that people would take dopamine replacement for, is that because there is a lack of dopamine, for lack of better terms, it's easy to be a couch potato. because you don't have the dopamine you used to have, which means you probably don't have the drive you used to have. Now, this is a generalization. This is not straight across the board by any means. I have some people who come in here and they don't care. They just come in and they're giving it all they got, and they never miss, and they're never late, and they'll stay extra and do stuff. But that's not the norm for the Parkinson's population. So the biggest factor is consistency. And I just say to those who, if you're ever experiencing this, if you're not feeling driven and you'd rather sit on your couch, I'm one of these people. I love my couch for an hour every morning and 2 cups of coffee and just being in my zen or whatever, not really doing anything, enjoying the morning, early morning. Getting off that couch is the hardest thing, but all I can say is just get started. Because once you start doing anything, even if it's your taxes, if it's a chore in the house, if it's your homework, if it's your exercise, if it's your whatever, the body moves, brain chemistry happens. You'll get the energy to keep going most of the time, and you just need to get started. And that comes back to that consistency thing. It's so important to be consistent. So that means that if you have trouble getting started, you just need to get started. And generally speaking, you'll feel so much better after you got started and did your thing, and you'll feel accomplished and physically better and all that kind of stuff.
I think those are great words. Definitely hits home, I'm sure, with a lot of people who are going to listen to this. And it's sometimes being so introspective to understand that those things are real and you have some control over those things can be very, very powerful. So, Karl, I think we're about out of time for today. So I wanted to thank you again for coming on. This has been great. And I know that our listeners are going to really enjoy this one. So we'll send this out, and I look forward to talking to you more even after this interview cast here about some of those things we talked about, and just moving forward with total health.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for everything that you're doing. Your work is great. Your live video, all your videos are great. People should be watching them. Follow Eric, follow Motion Guidance, because if you put on your alerts, you'll know when he's on, and then you can go join, because that's what I do. All the stuff you're doing is great, and thanks so much for having me. Appreciate it a lot.
Appreciate that, and have a great 2022.
You too, my friend.
All right, take care. Bye-bye.
Take care now.